Happiness that the surrounding brings, freshness, sweetness, happiness that the surrounding brings. Take care of the nature before it takes care of you. Ooh, take care of the nature before.
Welcome back. If you're tuning in right now, you're watching Earth Check on KUTV. Our focus today is on Nairobi Summer School on climate justice. And seems like the experience here has been one quite of an interesting. I talked to some few people who really shared their experiences. Plus, seems like if you were tuning in right now, you learn a thing or two about climate finance, climate justice, you name it. So I'll leave it to the expert to talk about it. Professor, let's start with a brief introduction of who you are.
My name is Chinedu Mwajoba. Sounds strange to you. Chinedu Mwajoba, and I come from Nigeria. I'm trained as an agricultural economist and then with degrees in development economics, and left office sometime in February this year as a vice chancellor in one of the federal universities in Nigeria. And my area is resource and environmental economics.
So why Nairobi Summer School?
Why not Nairobi Summer School? Yeah, well, it's a good place to be, and inviting mostly Africans of a certain generation from across the African continent, and a few residents outside Africa, and also some of us from Asia and some of us from South America here. So we agreed to meet. We took this decision way back in 2019 to meet Ika, when you know him very well. He heads PACJA. PACJA is Pan-African, by the way. And I also chair NEST, the Nigerian Environmental Study Action Team. He's in alliance with PACJA. So we've been working together for maybe about a decade now. So we decided that it needs to bring together young Africans to achieve a number of objectives. We need to take up the next generation. So it's mostly people of a certain generation, not my own generation. So be sure that people who, there's no gap in knowledge, and people understand what we have passed through, where we are, and where we think we should be headed. Hoping that in a few years back, coming, they will be the main people involved in presenting the African case, and also pushing the global north to understand the African perspective to these issues. So that's one core interest objective for the summer school. Then, it's very often elderly people think that young people may not, it's like that even in the homes. And we also think that we're not seeing many people coming after us who seem to be as agitated and as articulate. Maybe we are wrong. And even in this summer school, I think we've also seen evidence that we may just be wrong, And it's just about the next generation of young Africans mostly to put them on track, pass our experiences and knowledge so that they'll do their thing when they take over.
So in short, young people are the voices of tomorrow.
That's correct. The new voices.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about climate finance. How important is it? Especially to developing countries.
Everybody talks money, right?
Of course, very important.
Well, it's important.
Yeah.
As you know, and that's been part of what we're trying to explain here, the global economic system and the global financial system that the world has evolved is one that has put Africa in a disadvantaged position. The world of money, the world of finance, we're disadvantaged. And we are disadvantaged because of the historical design and evolution of the world economic system. We were not always poor people, but the economic system puts us in that position. And so, we also want people to understand that what we suffer today in climate change is not about what is happening today. It's a result of what has happened in the last 2 centuries. And we are minor contributors to this. So, it turns out that those who are the major contributors and we call them the Annex 1 countries, if you like, mostly the OECD countries, also happen to be with those who have better financial capacities. And a number of principles guide these issues. When you pollute, you pay. The polluter pays. That's their principle. Even in their domestic, in their own home countries, they understand that, they apply that. When you pollute, you pay. That's what happens in those countries. But in the global, it should also apply. But of course, people are reluctant to pay. So they need to find all kinds of arguments. Well, it's not about being guilty, but about taking responsibility for what you have caused. And then it also turns out, by some design, the African continent is in a more dire situation. Africa, of course, has a lot of variability. Everything is happening here. The dry lands, the wetlands, the floodlands, Then the capacity to adapt. If you don't have the financial capacity, you will not be able to adapt. People who are poorer in terms of the finances have less capacity for adaptation, less capacity to change. So it's simple logic. But as you would expect, you find a lot of resistance and reluctance to take the responsibility. But we're not going to keep quiet. And that's at the foundation of the climate justice. Because it's unjust to want somebody else to take responsibility for what you've used historically for your comfort. And we pay.
Okay, Professor. So let's talk about what you would plan to achieve with Nairobi Summer School.
What we plan to achieve? I mean, we're sowing seeds for a new generation. Yeah. So we expect harvest. It's logic. So we want to multiply the number of young persons who have clarity of thoughts. It's in the place, traditionally, of the elder to tell stories, and for the younger people to listen and to learn. And so we can pass on the knowledge. Like I said earlier, we brought people from a broad base of experiences, but mostly people who are interested in civil society and non-government organizations, who are activists on these issues. But we need to strengthen them with knowledge. The basic knowledge of the climate science, for instance, the presentation I made last week, Tuesday. What is climate change? What's causing climate change? What are the impacts of climate change? And from the basic science of it, we need to equip people across board, those who study geography or those who study climatology, as well as people from other backgrounds. You need to be familiar with these issues. Now, what has caused climate change? The greenhouse effects as a result of the emissions of carbon, methane, nitrate, sulfates, are rising historically over time. Present the science that shows that compared to pre-industrial revolution, if you like, 1780, late 18th century, there's evidence, scientific evidence that average global temperature has gone up at least 1 degree. Present the science that shows that if a 1 degree Celsius increase in global average temperature above the benchmark industrial revolution creates the consequences we're seeing. And then we don't have much space anymore to further increase global temperature. And of course, you're familiar with the Paris Agreement and the target of 1.5 degrees. That is nothing more than additional 0.5. And certainly we should try to avoid the 2 degrees increase, above that benchmark. So if this 1 degree Celsius increase has this consequence, an additional 50% increase on that may just turn out to be terrible for everyone, So we need to understand that and understand why we need to do everything possible to stop that happening. And how do we stop that happening? It's about reducing your carbon emissions. It's about the energy transition, right? Because clearly it's the energy that is the single most critical factor that has led to this, the source of energy, burning of fossil fuels. The alternatives emerging, the opportunities and people should be aware, and people should transit. But then the issue of justice to everyone, justice to not just between the global north and global south, but also locally, domestically. We're interested in the preservation of, in the conservation of the forest resources. In this period, we've had to go to the Nakuru forest, for instance. That's wonderful. It's a sign of a civilized society. Very rare, to have such forest resource. Okay, and we're all enjoying it. We're all benefiting from it. Carbon dioxide is important, but so is oxygen. And the basic science.